It's HyperCharge time!
And today I'll be ranking all 7 from worst to best. Hope you enjoy. So starting off with probably my most controversial opinion, in 7th place we have Rico and his HyperCharge. Honestly, I just don't see how this can be really that helpful. This is not like his mutation used to be. It's not gonna be that broken. Honestly, think for a second, it's only bonus bounce range on the super and while you're a hypercharge. Yes, the stat increases can be really broken with the bonus damage, I can see that being a thing, but there are just better hypercharges. I'm not saying that the hypercharge is bad, it's not like Miko's hypercharge or Brock's hypercharge, but out of the 7, in my opinion, it is clearly the worst of them all. Next we have Gil's hypercharge, and honestly, this one depends in a lot of things. Number 1, does this mean that with the double recharge rates, technically because you have 2 supers, does that mean that you can get another hyper super with only 2 attacks? Because back in the good old days when Gale was actually broken, this was kind of the problem because he could get his super with only a super and 2 attacks. So I guess that if he can do this with the hypercharge, these would be almost like reverting all of the previous nerfs that he received, but in a hypercharge. Not to mention that obviously you deal more damage, and obviously technically it can make the stun slightly longer, but it would be a very small extra stun, and obviously the bonus stats just make you deal even more damage, and Gale can already deal a very decent amount of damage, and he has a good amount of HP as well. So I feel like honestly it will kinda depend on the rate, and if the double attack plus double super kinda will give you another super. If yes, then this hypercharge will be good. If not, I honestly feel like this hypercharge will barely have any value. But regardless, I still feel like it's gonna be better than Rico's hypercharge. Next we have Barley's hypercharge. Now his super throws 3 big bottles that deal all the damage. So in area control terms, it seems that it has a slightly larger area of effect because it is a larger puddle, so I guess that's kinda good in terms of area control. And on top of that, depending on the stat increases, it can make his super a lot deadlier, which is obviously very good. I think that his hypercharge has like 20% bonus damage or 25%, and for him it's gonna be very valuable. On top of that, destroying bushes, it's a very sweet bonus. Barley does suffer a lot from assassins and things like that, so destroying bushes without destroying the walls can be pretty helpful for him. I feel like it will kinda depend on how often you can get this hypercharge, but I have a feeling that it will not take much longer. I pretty darn sure that it should have a very fast rate, and even if it doesn't, the area control will just be very solid, and destroying bushes can be pretty darn helpful in my opinion. I feel like people are gonna sleep on this hypercharge a lot, so be careful with Barley. In 4th place, right in the middle, we have M's hypercharge. Honestly, the push effect, it's literally her gadget, but the extra spray damage that you throw around, it's also pretty cool, honestly, in my opinion. And it's a very sweet bonus damage as well, but I feel like the major thing that's gonna make this hypercharge so good, it is the bonus damage. Like if you pay attention, there is a small moment where Ems deals 2225 damage to El Primo. That is so much damage. Honestly, I feel like this will make not only Ems a lot safer to play, because you can it's technically a bonus gadget in a certain way, but at the same time, even though this hypercharge will be for sure very strong when well played, and Strategic Zone is a very good example, but also the bonus stats will be very helpful at just finishing off anything at all, but it will kind of depend on the rate in my opinion. If it has a very small rate, like 30% or below that, I feel like the hypercharge is not gonna be as good, but overall, pretty good hypercharge. And now in 3rd place we have Piper's hypercharge, and honestly I feel like this one is being kinda underrated. So it looks like you shoot double the bombs with your super, which is already pretty darn strong, but your knockback when you actually land on the ground. It also destroys bushes and walls, which it feels pretty powerful. I wonder if that's even gonna deal damage, because I mean such an explosion should deal some damage. And on top of that, they did not mention in the Brawl Talk that your super, it also, at least it looks slightly faster. Like clearly is not spending as much time in the sky as she would normally. And I mean, more bombs, it can just allow her to just destroy any sort of assassin. Like, imagine being the middle of all of that, you would be long gone. And the knockback, it can just make Piper so aggressive. And I mean, I like it because that's the whole point of HyperCharges, and I was really questioning how they would do it, and I feel like honestly they nailed the spot. This HyperCharge is gonna be really solid. In second place, we have Angelo's HyperCharge. I mean, we were all kind of already expecting this. Your super now follows you. That is so strong. You have like a damage area around you and a healing area that follows you. During this HyperCharge, you only need to activate the super to have a 8-second 600 HP heal per second, and the damage as well, and the poison arrows. You don't even need the HyperCharge, you only need the super of the HyperCharge for it to make Angelo even stronger. Honestly, the HyperCharge could in some scenarios be kinda useless, because sometimes in more passive game modes, the HyperCharge is not really gonna do much, but in game modes more like football, or I could also think of high strategic zone kinda in some scenarios, I feel like this HyperCharge is gonna be really strong, because guaranteed poison damage, guaranteed healing, it's great. I feel like this HyperCharge, it will be extremely strong, especially considering that Angelo is already a strong brawler. So I'm only hoping that this HyperCharge has very small rates, because if it is very easily cyclable like his super is, this HyperCharge is going to be absolutely broken. And at number 1, we have Frank. This is just stupid. I mean, this kind of feels like Fang's HyperCharge in a certain way, completely removing aiming from the super. And I don't care how small the rate is, even if it takes 4 supers, it's gonna be broken. And together with his first gadget that makes him immune to stuns and knockbacks, you're not gonna be able to stop that super. Frank will literally destroy everything around him. I mean, you thought a Jackie super was already a death sentence? Wait until you meet Frank's HyperCharge super. This is so stupid. This HyperCharge, it is for sure the most broken of them all. I am just praying at this point that the HyperCharge, it's like 4 supers to get it. And even with that, it will be very broken, because Frank can get his super so easily. Like, I honestly cannot wait. This is for sure the first HyperCharge I'm gonna buy. Especially after Frank's rework, that it's not really even a rework, it's just a straight up buff. This HyperCharge is for sure one of the strongest. And I will say, the strongest. I mean, well, it's time to play Frank. It's his time to shine. I am so glad. After 3 years, he finally had a broken HyperCharge.